Parents, what horrific moments made me realize there was something wrong with your kid in 2012. And notice my 7-year-old dog had been acting noticeably different. I guess I could describe it as a distant, and even if depressed, he was normally had extremely outgoing, very playful and energetic dog, but suddenly he started acting very withdrawn and nervous. Known people, even his own family, at first I kind of brushed it off as I am feeling under the weather, but after about a week and a half, I decided maybe he needed to see a vet. After an examination, the vet told me that he suspected the dog had been sodomized due to the damage around his butt. He said he could not really imagine that his injuries could have come about any other way to already. He was pretty upset and sort of freaking out. Who would do this kind of things to the dog? I came home and thought about it for a while. I thought about all the people who had access to the dog in my backyard, but the only people who lived in the house were my wife, my children, or teenage. So for some reason, I had this really ugly, sinking feeling in my stomach about the possibility that it could have been my son. I decided to look around his rooms. I did not really know what I was expecting to find. I did not really find anything in there that screamed guilty until I checked his browser history. Found he had been a savage, disgusting animal from recently in a site with pictures. This sort of that felt like I was going to throw up. Now I knew that this was not definitive proof of anything, but the more I thought about it, the more I was convinced that my son had been sodomizing our dog. That night after my wife went to bed, I went into my son's room to help. I talked basically. He said, "Listen," and noticed the dog has been acting weird. I took him to the vet and I found out someone had sodomized him. Any ideas what might be happen? I looked at my son, and while he seemed bare, so slightly nervous, he pretended to know nothing about it. So I brought up the sites I found on his computer. Naturally, this made him pretty upset, and he got really indignant at the thought that I snooped around on his computer. I got him back to the point and tried to be as understanding and friendly as I could. I told him that whatever happened, I was not going to judge him and he was not going to be punished. I just needed to know the truth. After about 15 minutes of this, he finally bowed down and admitted that he used his fingers in the handles of a hairbrush of the dog the previous week. He said he was not trying to hurt him, and he stopped when the dog at one point freaked out. He said he did not think he hurt Qley that had, and she was too embarrassed to tell us or do anything or it believed him in this, but he also did not give a base satisfactory answer as to why exactly he would do this in the first place. Regardless, I did not want to blow up the situation, so we intentionally agreed that I would not tell this. Tell his mom. My one condition was that we would find a reason to tell her that he needed to see a therapist for a bit. It made him swear that would not to touch the dog like that again under threat of several consequences. When I looked at a therapist that specialized in teenager, I made a preliminary appointment for my son to go in and talk to her and disclose to her some of the issues without getting into too much detail. I did not tell my son this, but I thought it would be helpful for her to have some idea of what we were dealing with. At the time, my dogs were still not in the best of spirits, but seemed to be making progress. I took him for the more walks and tried to be extra good to him as well. Slowly, he became more playful, and the love seemed to slowly bring the happiness back into his eyes. That was until one morning I caught my son in the backyard holding on to Qley's private area while playing tug of war with him. While the dog seemed to be okay, my son was basically giving and messaging the dog's privates as he held him in place under the guise of a tug of war game. Obviously, a storm outside gave him in anger, and we had a very serious and angry talk. He had promised me never to treat the dog in a remotely appropriate way. After our last incident, I put him in his rooms for the rest of the day. My wife was still at work, and I did not know what to do. I was my wits, and apparently therapy had not been working this time. When his mom came home, I told her the real reason why I wanted him in therapy. He explained that he is not comfortable with her knowing, so I made him a federally promise under the condition he never do anything like that again. Needless to say, she was pretty shocked and upset then. I told her what I saw that day, and she got even more upset. It went for A few minutes of anger to tears, she told me she felt betrayed, and after calling me some choices names, she gave her purse and just left the house. I had no idea where she went, but I did not try to stop her. Felt I like the most awesome husband and father in the world. Returned that afterwards, I went to speak to my son. He was pretty unhappy. They had told his mom about today's accident before, but after speaking with him briefly, I thought he understood that it was necessary. Eventually, my wife called me to say she was staying at her sister's house that night to clear her head. She had calmed down a bit, but said she did not think she could handle all of this tonight. I said I understood and apologized again profusely for not telling her sooner. When we got off the phone, I said I love you, and she just hung up after staying at her sister's house for a few days. My wife came home and we got into several arguments over the next week about our son and what to do. Of course, I was painted as a bad guy for not including her in a major parenting issues. I told her we should find a new home for Qley since he obviously would not be safe with us anymore. My wife did not like this idea, and after several more arguments, I found out that she suspected our son never even abused the dog to begin with. She told me that she had spoken to her son about it and he denied ever doing anything to basically. I had my son denying he never ceremonied the dog, and my wife was now pissed off because she was hearing two conflict stories from us. She went bored up in the head of our argument. Then she thought of anything I ceremonied the dog. As you can imagine, I was furious. To make a long story short, we did not resolve anything and it did only become more embittered with each other in this, along with a few other marital issues, finally led to my wife asking for a trial separation. Weeks later, my son decided to live with her, so I moved out to friend's house while I tried to figure out what we are going to do next. I tried to take Qley with me, but this only led to more fictions and infighting just from my wife. As a result, Qley stayed with them. I tried to confront my son about denying what he did, but he would not talk to me and started calling me crazy. I guess he saw him way out of all of this and decided to just throw his dad under the bus. To be honest, that was probably the most hurtful part of the entire ordeal. I was used to having my wife being complete jack to me at this point, but the betrayal of my son, who I was only trying to help, was like a knife in my heart. Being said, I had to remind myself that he was just a kid in awkward situations, and I tried not to hold it against him. After all, if my wife and I ended up with a divorce down the road, he would be the only thing I loved. So I was trying not to do irreparable damage to our relationship. I felt like I had done enough damage to his family. I wished could say my priority at that time was still on Qley safely, but I would have been lying. In my relationship with my family was in tatters. And I did not know what to do, fix it obviously. I still wanted to see Qley rehomed as well, but I felt like I needed to focus on fixing my relationship with my wife and son so my life could go back to normal. I had tried to calling my son for several days in the hope that I could convince him to come clean and help get us on the road to fixing a family. He did not pick up more, nor did he ever call me back. So weeks ago, I decided to show up at the house when I knew they would all be there and knocked on the door and my wife would not answer it. Hamid, I kind of lost it and started shouting and pounding on it. She eventually came outside. When a yelling match ensued between her and me in the front yard, I finally left after she just put her hands over the yards. I started yelling dog abuser over and her eyes started shouting and pounding on it. She eventually came outside while a yelling match ensued between her and me in the front yard. I finally left after she just put her hands over her ears. I started yelling dog abuser over and over again to try humiliate me in front of the neighborhood. As I walked back to my car, fuming, and looked back at the house, there I saw my son staring at me from the second-story window with a blank look on his face. I stared at him and shook my head, disappointment, but he did not change his expression. He admitted that really broke my heart and pissed me off. Fast forward something later, and I was at work when suddenly my phone went in. It was my wife. I picked it up and she was sewing and obviously her post. Be upset and she told me that Qley had beaten my son and he had gone to the hospital to get stitches. She said Qley beat him in lower abdomen 2 times. She did not know what to think obviously. I knew exactly what had happened. I could tell she finally knew I was right. Qley would never bite anyone. Unprovoked and had no story of beating for or being aggressive. At all when we got off on the phone, I felt like the rage building inside of me. I felt like it was finally time for this to end. Qley had betrayed both of us. I could not prove it, but just me, my son was abusing the dog again. It was look. Qley finally lashed out in desperation after having nobody there to protect him. I felt sick too. That's too much for having I wanted my dog with my kid who obviously did not care about me or any of us as long as he could keep getting away with stuff. I left work and went straight to the family home. This time my wife answered the door and let me in. I went straight to my son's room where he was laying down watching TV. He looked at me in surprise. I told him not to talk. Basically said, I know what you did. You can deny it and blame me all you want, but you ain't. You both know what happened. I am talking the dog, and if we find out you go near an animal like this again, I will report you to the police. I don't care if we are my son. This is disgusting and unfair, and I guessed you better. Then I went downstairs and out the back door to get the dog. I put a leash on Qley and walked him back through the house. On my way out, my wife stopped me and told me she was sorry. We talked for about 5 minutes and we both got a little weepy. She asked me to forgive her and told her I did. She then invited me to stay at the house, to which I said no, was not ready for that. The culprit is a better. He had already let him down too many times. I left her king in the house and put Qley in the car. We drove back my friend's place where I was staying. Qley was finally with me. Was safe. I needed to think about what our next move should be. I needed asking my friend to house me, and now a dog was pushing the bounds of his good gaze. But this was what truly happened. Fast forward to 2018, and me and ex never got back together. However, things had gotten better in those years. Qley sadly passed away a year before he was getting up there for a dog size. It was for natural cause, and I saw and did not talk for years, but we are much better than we were in 2012. When the accident took place, it's something to talk about with one another. I hope and pray he no longer fantasizes or concerns himself with that type of behavior. If he does, I would not know about it since he lives on his own now. This is for my ex-wife. She wound up in therapy after losing her job. Thus, they don't communicate much, but I do not hear good things about what she's up to now. There are rumors, substance in certain favors, etc. I don't really want to get into for my son's sake. As for my, we've been with a new woman for a few years now, and things are much better. We adopted a new dog after Qley, and we'll be already going to be best friend.